The magic and mythology of the forest. Once upon a time, many centuries ago, Europe was covered in vast forests. Today only patches survive, such as the Białowieża forest, which stretches across Poland and Belarus, the forest of Krywotkacko in the Czech Republic, the Black Forest in Germany, and Sherwood Forest in England. In times past, forests were considered to be the home of monsters, mythical gods, and magical spirits. They were the wild and the uncivilized, the counterpoint to man's ordered version of the world. If you grew up on the stories collected by the Brothers Grimm in Germany back in the 19th century, you might be forgiven for considering that forests are dark places where evil lurked behind every tree. But those tales serve to warn us not only about the threats of the forest and wild animals, but also the dark evils that lurk within humanity. After all, the grandma-eating wolf has the power of human speech. Humankind's relationship with forests is complex, and this is reflected in the way that we view the forest and those creatures, natural and supernatural, that live within it. In old European legends, the creatures, characters and deities who dwelt in the forests could indeed be malevolent, but they might also be benevolent or somewhere in between the two, depending on their mood and, crucially, on how they were treated. This is the moral in every tale. The forest has provided for us for millennia and still does. It gives us food, medicines, wood to make our homes and ships, and so much more. But humankind has taken too much and destroyed vast areas of woodland for our own ends. Surely we cannot blame any forest-dwelling entity who decides to take umbrage with humankind based on past actions. Long ago, before we built our sacred places from rocks or bricks, the forests or groves within were where many of the old gods and goddesses were worshipped. The Druids, who famously worshipped in oaks, took their name from the oak tree, for Druid means something akin to oak-wise. In Celtic mythology, they were specific goddesses of the sacred groves, such as the Gaulish Nemetona and the Romano-British Anametia, whose names mean she of the sacred grove. Sacred groves are also of major importance in Norse and Germanic cultures, especially for ritual sacrifices, the most famous of which are the grove which is part of the Uppsala temple complex, where every single tree was said to be considered sacred, and the sacred grove of Nerthus, where her idol was kept, which was said to be somewhere on the Danish island of Zealand. Many place names in Scandinavia, Germany and in England still allude to the ancient groves and gods and goddesses who were once worshipped there. Frölunda, Freya's grove; Froslunda, Frey's grove in Sweden; Onsholt, Odin's wood; Tislund, Tyr's grove; and Torslunda, Thor's grove in Denmark; Grimsey Grove, Grimwood being another name for Odin; and Tuesley, Tyr's clearing in the wood in England. And the old name for the Black Forest area was Abnoba Mons, after the local forest goddess Abnoba. In Estonia, many ancient groves, such as the Casinum sacred grove, and the local customs associated with them have survived to the modern day thanks to their continual cultural usage, taboos that have prevented their destruction, and the fact that many Estonians view them as an important part of their national identity. Almost every European culture has its own gods, goddesses and other spirits associated with forests and trees, and their life was often intrinsically linked to the life of their host tree or forest. Finland has the husband and wife team of Tapio and Miliki, who were deities linked with forests and hunting. In the Baltic tales, we are told of Laumis, one-eyed spirits of the forest who watched over cattle and childbirth. To the Slavs, Veles was the god of forests, marshes and the underworld, and forests were inhabited by hostile fire sprites known as the Samadivas or Vilis and Lekis, and satyr-like forest men with the ability to change their size from tiny to gigantic at will. In Scandinavian forests, and the animals who lived there were protected by the Skogsra, the forest guardian, also known as the Hulda or Telemaya, pine tree Mary, who could be kind to humans if suitable offerings were left, and whose woodland origins were evident in the fact that their backs were hollow like tree trunks. German and Swiss tales speak of the woodwives, who knew the medicinal secrets of the plants and the trees of the forest and could cause or cure illnesses depending on how they were treated by human passers-by. To the Romans, the forests and fertility in many different guises were the domain of Virbius and Silvanus, as well as the likes of Faunus and Pan. The Roman Diana, her Slavic equivalent Divana, and her Greek version of Artemis were goddesses of the forest, the hunting, the moon, childbirth. Greek mythology has many tales of nymphs associated with various types of tree. The Dryads were the nymphs of the oak, Milai were the nymphs of the ash, and the Alcides were the nymphs of the sacred groves. Deities also have various tree species or certain actual trees that were sacred or special to them. The Norse goddess Idun was the keeper of the apple tree and its fruit, which granted the Norse gods their youthfulness and longevity. The Finnish nature mother goddess Rauni takes her name from the rowan tree. Rowan and oak were sacred to Thor, and an oak tree in Hesse in Germany was called Donner's oak, or Jove's oak, was considered to be especially sacred to him until it was cut down in the 8th century. Other Thor-like gods of thunder from across Europe are also associated with the oak, such as the Slavic Perun, the Sami Uko, the Roman Jupiter Jove, and the Celtic Tyrannus. Oak was also sacred to the Celtic goddess of poetry and healing, Bridget, and there was an oak tree near Kildare in Ireland that was known as Bridget's Oak. Odin's sacred tree was the ash, and through his binames of Ig and Ermin he is associated with the Norse world tree, Yggdrasil, Ygsteed, and the sacred Germanic pillar or tree trunk, the Irminsul. Valais' sacred tree was the willow. The elder tree was protected by the Elder Mother, or Hildemoa, whose tales are found all over Britain and Scandinavia, and inspired the tale of the same name by Hans Christian Andersen. The olive tree was special to the Greek goddess Athena, who granted the tree its ability to fruit. The myrtle was loved by Aphrodite for its innate beauty. There were trees through which the ancient gods and man could communicate. The rustling of the wind through the trees was often interpreted as a voice or message from the gods and spirits, such as at the famous Hellenic oracle of Dione, possibly a form of Zeus or Dodona. Prayers and wishes were made to sacred trees in the hope of catching a god's ear, and even today people all over Europe make votive offerings such as rags and coins at certain trees to petition deities and spirits for good fortune and good health. Forests and trees are still of great importance in European culture. Today, almost every European country celebrates a national tree. England, Estonia, Ireland, Lithuania, Portugal and Romania all have various forms of the oak. Albania, Greece and Italy have the olive. Finland and Sweden have the birch. Macedonia has the pine. Russia has the fir. And Slovenia has the linden tree. Legend tells us of the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, and the great world tree that connects the many worlds, of which the world of man is only one. For the Norse and Germanic people, the world tree was either an ash tree or an evergreen yew. To the Sami, Tatars and Samoyeds, it was the birch. Like today's trees, the world tree is often described as being under attack from various creatures that gnaw on its roots, scrape at its bark and eat away at its leaves. However, there are signs the tide is turning. All across Europe, people are beginning to learn once again just how important trees and forests are, not just to nature and animals, but also to us humans. Our ancestors understood this relationship deeply. After all, some ancient European creation myths, the first man and woman were created from trees. Trees and forests provide us with places to relax and reconnect to nature. They inspire us, as they did our ancestors, to create stories and artworks. They can provide a buffer against fire and flood, and most importantly of all, they protect us and provide for us the oxygen that we breathe. And it's no coincidence that our words for breathing, inspiring and expiring, spirit and inspiration all actually share a common etymological origin. Finally, for the first time in millennia, the rate of deforestation is slowing in Europe. In some countries, the amount of forestation is actually increasing thanks to enhanced protection of existing forests and woodlands and to new planting projects. In 2016, Norway banned the clear-cutting of trees, essentially banning deforestation with its own borders. Forestation in Estonia has increased in recent decades, with 50% of the country now being wooded, and 30% of that is now protected. In Iceland, which before human settlement was around 40% woodland, there are ambitious plans by the Icelandic Forest Service to increase the decimated forest cover from the current 2%, already up on the 1% they had in the 1950s, to 12% by 2100. In England, we are following suit with a planned new northern forest, courtesy of the Woodland Trust, and community forests which will plant new trees to connect existing woodlands across northern England from coast to coast. Forests are living organisms and full of life, natural and perhaps even supernatural. Perhaps, just perhaps, in regreening our landscapes with trees, we rediscover the many and varied spirits and deities who once lived within them and find our own magic deep in the forest. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video.